You know that feeling when you instinctively reach for the last slice of pizza, even when you are completely stuffed? Or how rush hour traffic instantly feels less like a boring commute and more like a high-stakes gladiatorial arena? Well, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a source text that is incredibly brief, but honestly, it's profoundly impactful. It's a fundamental breakdown of human behavior called the Triad of Human Instinct. Now, sometimes the absolute best insights about human action aren't buried in some thousand-page textbook. Sometimes they're distilled into just a handful of perfectly chosen words that force us to look at the absolute bedrock of why we do what we do. So get ready. We're going to strip away all the polished complexities of modern society and look at the bare, unfiltered mechanics of human nature.
All right, let's just dive right into this. The text states unequivocally, humans are wired by default. And I want us to really methodically examine those words, because the author's choice of phrasing there, it's highly deliberate. It doesn't say humans are influenced or encouraged or socialized by their environment. No, it specifically uses the rigid language of mechanics and circuitry, wired. That implies a fundamental, unlearned baseline setting that exists inside every single one of us right from birth. Think about a brand new computer, fresh from the factory floor. Before you install a single app, before you change the wallpaper, it has a BIOS, right? An inherent core set of instructions it literally has to follow just to power on. The source text is arguing that humanity itself possesses this exact kind of inescapable baseline setting. It's not a suggestion, it's our hardwired circuitry.
Which naturally brings us to a really critical threshold. If we are inherently pre-programmed like that, we have to ask, what exactly is the baseline human instinct? Just pose this to yourself right now. If you strip away all the intricate laws of civilization, the carefully constructed etiquette, that polite part of your brain that graciously says, "Oh no, please, you take the last donut," while internally screaming, "Give me the sugar," what is actually left at the very core? What are the basic driving commands running beneath the surface of literally every single human interaction? Well, the source text promises to reveal these exact mechanisms, mapping out three distinct core drives that define our absolute starting point as a species.
But to really fully grasp what's coming, we have to meditate on this concept of default wiring for a second. Think of these drives exactly like the background apps on your smartphone. You might not be actively looking at them. You probably don't even realize you open them, but they are constantly running in the background, silently draining your battery and dictating your processing power. The absolutely crucial point here is that these drives are not presented by the source text as lifestyle preferences or conscious choices. They are the baseline state, the innate operating system that is present long before any other external factors, like your education or your culture, even apply. We are looking at the raw code of human motivation here, the foundational architectural elements that govern our actions from the very moment we exist.
Now, consider the sheer, uncompromising focus of this first instinct, consumption. Just let the weight of that word sit with you for a moment. According to our source, this is the very first innate drive. Before absolutely anything else humanity is wired to consume, we take in. And look, this isn't just about eating food. It's about hoarding groceries before a winter storm. It's about endlessly scrolling and binge-watching content to consume information. It's acquiring wealth, buying property, taking up space, and just gathering resources simply to exist and sustain ourselves. The text isolates this concept to really make us feel its overwhelming, instinctual force. It is the continuous, unending engine of human survival, a primal, insatiable drive to acquire and absorb the world around us. At our very baseline, we are a species built to take in.
But here is where the narrative logically shifts, because obviously we don't exist in a vacuum. You are not the only entity running this exact baseline code. So what happens when this intense default drive for consumption meets others? Imagine two separate perfectly functioning operating systems suddenly instructed to claim the exact same megabyte of data on a shared hard drive. A collision is totally imminent, right? If every single human being is independently wired to consume, to acquire, and to take in resources, what actually occurs when multiple individuals occupy the exact same physical or social space? It's a fascinating question, because it moves us from the internal wiring of an isolated individual right to the inevitable, explosive interaction of a group.
The text posits that the answer is competition. This is the second massive concept in the triad. And what's brilliant about the source material here is that it doesn't present competition as some malicious, conscious choice to be mean or aggressive. Instead, it's just the perfectly natural default progression of multiple humans driven by consumption. It scales flawlessly throughout all of human history. This is the exact same underlying mechanism that drove ancient tribes to aggressively compete for access to a fertile river valley, and the exact same drive that makes two modern corporate coworkers subtly try to outmaneuver each other for a single middle management promotion. When resources, space, or energy are finite, and the drive to consume is universal, friction is completely unavoidable. Competition is simply the outward expression of two or more entities following their baseline programming at the exact same time.
But the narrative doesn't stop there. Friction rarely lasts forever without reaching a tipping point, does it? Competition is an active process. It's a state of continuous action and struggle. And quite frankly, a state of constant friction is entirely unsustainable. It is exhausting. So, if we're instinctually driven to consume and naturally forced into competition with our neighbors to secure that consumption, what is the ultimate resolution? Where does this intense, continuous state of competing inevitably lead us, according to the source material? What's the final command in the code?
Conquer. Now, I want to slow our pace down significantly right here, just to truly reflect on the immense weight and the absolute finality of this word. As the third and final element of our baseline human default, conquer is the endpoint. Why? Because without the conquer phase, humans would just exist in a perpetual exhausting state of conflict. The system would burn itself out completely. Our wiring demands a definitive end state to conserve energy. The instinctual loop isn't satisfied just by playing the game. It's wired to definitively win it. To conquer is to secure the resources, to resolve the competition, and to establish dominance so that the initial drive of consumption is unequivocally protected. This can be as grand as a nation securing a border, or as trivial as claiming the shared armrest on an airplane so definitively that the passenger next to you simply gives up. It represents the ultimate, instinctual conclusion to the friction of existence.
When we finally zoom out, we see the complete architecture of the text, the Triad of Human Instinct. Notice the strict, unbroken sequential relationship here. Step 1, consumption, setting the catalyst and the inherent need. Step 2, competition, representing the inevitable process in the friction. And step 3, conquer, providing the necessary resolution and finality. The source text unifies these three concepts into a single, cohesive progression. It argues that you literally cannot separate them. They are a sequential chain reaction perfectly encoded into the human operating system. One simply triggers the next, falling like dominoes in the human psyche.
Which brings us to a pretty fascinating conclusion, leaving us to look at our own lives through the lens of this source material. If consumption, competition, and conquer truly are our absolute defaults, our baseline, inescapable wiring, are we ultimately bound to them? Are we merely slaves to the code, doomed to forever repeat this cycle of friction and dominance? Or does acknowledging our default programming finally give us the awareness needed to become the programmers ourselves and perhaps consciously rewrite how we react to the world? It's a profound, challenging thought to take with you today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I will see you next time.